Today we're going to harvest rhubarb. Rhubarb is a perennial vegetable, which means it comes back year after year. The harvesting time is in the spring through about the end of June. Right now it is the end of May and mine is ready to harvest. We're going to harvest when the stems are about 12 to 24 inches in length. So let's get started on this one. Looking down at the crown of the plant, you can see that there is a lot of large stems. Now, you want to leave about 1/3 of the plant behind, so you don't want to take 100% of the stalks. I'm going to start by grabbing the large stalks. Now, you do not want to cut this off with the scissors, which is tempting to do. Rather, I'm going to grab my hand on the base of the stalk, pull and twist. Now, it may pull a little hard. Nope. Not the greatest example on that one, but... And you want to make sure that you trim off the leaf. The leaves are poisonous, so we don't want to leave this behind for any animals. And in my case, I do have sheep, so I don't want to leave these leaves behind for them to munch on. I'm also not going to throw them in my compost pile, since my sheep do have access to my compost pile, so I'm just going to toss them in the garbage. So here's the stalk that's ready to go into the kitchen. Let's go in and grab some more. Now that was a good example there of how that's supposed to pull off. So you can see a close-up of the tip of that there. So you have to pull pretty hard. Again, I'm going to cut off the leaf. Some people will take the leaves and place them under the plant and just let them compost down underneath the plant and kind of use it as like a mulch or a weed suppressant. But again, since I have animals, I don't want to have them around at all. So we're going to continue pulling these out, starting with the largest stalks. Now, the color doesn't matter. You may think that the red means it's ripe and the green means it's unripe, but it does just depend on the variety. So some varieties are green, some are red. That one is good. So you really want to hold as close to the base as you can. And I actually like to use 2 hands and then pull pretty hard, and that's how it is supposed to pull up. Again, I'm looking for the largest of the branches, or the stalks. Here's another large one. Let's grab hold of that. Okay, good example there. I would say that this plant is actually a little past due. I could have harvested it earlier, but life gets busy and it doesn't always happen on time. So you can harvest pretty aggressively through the end of June. Now, I'm in Minnesota in Zone 4, so keep that in mind. Chop the leaves off. The good thing with rhubarb is that it does freeze well. So if it's too much to eat at once, you can freeze it. You can place all of your harvested stalks in a bucket or a container. Now this is an overcast day today, and we've been getting a lot of thunderstorms and rain. So I feel like this is a good time to do this where I'm not stressing the plant with excessive heat or lack of rain. Although I would say rhubarb is a very vigorous plant. Rhubarb is a heavy feeder, which means it does need a lot of nutrients to grow. So a good idea is to put manure on the plant. I would do it once a year. The pH of the soil does not matter for rhubarb. It's a pretty simple plant. So I actually have two that are growing right next to each other. So I'm going to go over here and harvest some off of this. With this rhubarb plant, I actually didn't start this one. This was on the property when I bought it. And it's kind of growing in a unusual spot. It's next to a cement slab in the ground. But I was happy to have this plant here when I moved here. Another thing that's nice about rhubarb is that because the leaves are so gigantic, it really eliminates the need to do much weeding around the plants. It kind of reminds me of my winter squash when it's vining out and the leaves are rather large. That it kind of suppresses the weeds on its own. And I'm happy if I can do less weeding. That is a bonus for me. Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop for today. I'm going to leave these remaining stalks behind. Now I can continue harvesting through to the end of June in my area. Once we're past that harvesting time, so July onward, then you would want to leave about 1/3 of the plant behind to preserve energy so it can survive through the winter and into the next year. So leave some leaves and about 1/3 left behind. Next, we're going to go into the kitchen. We're going to wash up our stalks, start chopping them up to use them for delicious recipes inside. I'll meet you inside. I want to show you some examples of rhubarb that I started from seed. I want to say it's been maybe 2 years. So they're pretty small, but they're so hardy, they came back pretty good. I just plopped these in a random spot, honestly. I don't really have a designated area for rhubarb right now, so I just plopped them in the ground here as a holding pattern. When you start rhubarb from seed, you don't want to harvest it until the 3rd season. I think this is my 2nd season. I'm kind of losing track of time. Life gets a little busy sometimes. But you would not obviously harvest this. This is quite small yet. So if you're starting from seed, wait till the 3rd season. Now if you get a division of a plant from somebody else, then you can wait until the 2nd season and harvest. That will speed it up faster versus starting from seed. So I've brought my rhubarb cuttings into the house, and the first step is to wash them. Using cold water, just go ahead and rinse the dirt off of the stalks. We'll be cutting off these ends in a minute, so you don't need to wash the ends that good. So here's our finished pile of washed rhubarb. The next step is to start chopping this up. Next, we're going to chop up our rhubarb, and we'll be placing it in a freezer bag for preserving it so we can make it another day. So take your stalks, and we're going to be cutting off the end that was connected to the crown. So right here. And go ahead and chop that off. The other end we already chopped off when we were cutting off the leaf. So we're just simply going to cut this up like you would a stalk of celery. You can do whatever size you want to do. If you want to make them small, make them large. It's totally up to you. You can see that it does stain a little bit, so good to use a cutting board. Although rhubarb isn't necessarily my favorite crop to eat, there are some things that I do like about rhubarb. I do like that rhubarb is an early crop, and it is one of the first things in the spring to grow. Where normally most other crops are due in September around here, and it can be really overwhelming when everything comes ripe all in the same month. So it is really nice to have a diversity of crops on your property, especially if you're wanting to go for a self-sufficient homestead. I also like that rhubarb can last 15 years or more. So I consider that a pretty good return on my investment when I start a rhubarb plant. Now, there is some controversy about the oxalic acid that's in rhubarb. When you look on the internet, you do read about how the rhubarb leaves have lots of oxalic acid and are therefore poisonous. And I also understand that the stems also have some of that as well. However, I do think about oxalic acid in other crops, such as spinach, and we do eat a lot of spinach. And the problem with the oxalic acid is that apparently it can interfere with calcium absorption. So in my opinion, moderation is key. I wouldn't eat large, insane quantities of spinach, nor would I eat large, insane quantities of rhubarb. So to me, moderation is key in pretty much anything that you're going to consume, generally speaking. I've heard of some people that will actually boil or soak their rhubarb in an attempt to lower the oxalic acid. I'm pretty much going to be baking mine into breads or a crisp. I will have to say that the color of this rhubarb is so pretty. I really like the lime green against the hot pink. One of my favorite color schemes. So go ahead and keep dicing up your rhubarb to the size that you like. and you can just throw it in a freezer bag and freeze it. Usually I have more time in the winter months to do my baking, so I'll enjoy this in the middle of winter.